Welcome to today's Explainer. When we think about the history and identity of the United States, we kind of tend to picture those perfectly curated stories we all learned in high school, right? The grand declarations, marble statues, those neat, orderly timelines. But honestly, the truth is just way more captivating. The U.S. is literally packed with these wild, textbook-defying stories, surprising achievements, and little-known facts that show just how wonderfully complex the country actually is. So today, we're going to peel back those textbook pages and dive into the unexpected realities that make up the true fabric of the American story.
Let's kick things off with a super easy question. When is American Independence Day? Ask anyone on the street and they're going to immediately say the 4th of July, obviously. It's the day of fireworks, barbecues, the whole shebang. But if we really want to understand the fabric of America, we've got to realize that even our most bedrock facts usually have a little hidden twist.
Here's the thing. The reality of that famous week back in 1776 is actually kind of split. July 2nd, 1776 was the day the actual official vote for independence took place. That was the real make-or-break moment. But July 4th, that date merely marks the adoption of the formal paperwork, the Declaration of Independence itself. It totally changes how you view history, doesn't it? The true, decisive action happened a couple of days before the date we actually print on all our calendars. And this perfectly sets up what we're talking about today. The real story is basically always far more intriguing than the simplified version we're usually taught.
Moving on to Section 1, Symbols and Surprises.
Let's take a look at one of the most recognizable emblems on the planet, the 50-star American flag. Now, you might assume a design representing a massive global superpower was, carefully crafted by some prestigious committee of artists and politicians in a top-secret government room. No way. The current 50-star flag was actually designed in 1958 by a 17-year-old student. He just threw it together as a high school project. One teenager, given a totally standard class assignment, essentially designed the visual identity of modern America.
And honestly, here is the absolute best part of the whole story. His teacher originally gave this national-level, historically iconic design a B grade. Can you believe that? The main takeaway here is that greatness and truly lasting national symbols can come from the most ordinary, unexpected places. It wasn't born in a grand hall, it was born in a high school classroom, and the kid didn't even get an A.
All right, let's jump into Section 2, Astonishing Geography and Scale. So, America isn't just full of quirky historical footnotes. The sheer modern scale of the country is honestly pretty hard to wrap your head around. For instance, we naturally expect the U.S. Air Force to be the largest air force in the world. That totally makes sense for a country with such massive military might. But get this, the second largest air force in the entire world? That actually belongs to the U.S. Navy. Yeah, the combined strength of just those two branches makes the United States home to the two largest air forces on the planet simultaneously. It is a staggering statistic that really puts the country's immense resources into sharp perspective.
But hey, let's pivot from military appetite to, literal appetite. 100 acres. I really want you to visualize a massive plot of land, a full 100 acres wide. That is the exact amount of space that would be covered by the pizza sold in America every single day. Literally every single day. When we talk about the unique culture and the staggering statistics of this nation, we absolutely have to include the sheer, unadulterated volume of everyday life. That's a lot of pizza.
And yet beneath all those pizza places and the sprawling modern infrastructure, there's this deeply ancient natural foundation. Politically speaking, the United States is a very young nation, basically just a blip on the timeline of human history. But geographically, totally different story. The U.S. landscape actually features 3 of the absolute oldest rivers in the entire world flowing right through it. We're talking about the New River, the Susquehanna River, and the French Broad River. So while the nation's political history is measured in hundreds of years, the water cutting through its mountains is measured in millions. Speaking of water, let's talk for a second about Lake Superior. We all know it's a great lake, but honestly, that title hardly does it justice. To put it into perspective, if you were to take all the water contained just within Lake Superior, it would be enough to cover the entire landmass of North America and South America in a full foot of water. Just let that sink in for a moment. This single body of American water holds a volume so incomprehensible it could literally submerge 2 entire continents. It's exactly this kind of dramatic natural scale that defines the physical reality of the country. Okay, moving right along to Section 3, Peculiar Presidential Trivia. Whenever we think of American presidents, we usually picture them in stoic portraits or delivering these grand, historic speeches, right?
but their actual real lives are packed with eccentricities. Take Abraham Lincoln. He's often revered as the great emancipator and a towering statesman, but he was actually a man of many surprising trades. He remains the only U.S. president to ever hold a patent, which is super cool, shows his inventive mind, and he was also a saloon owner, which is a gritty reality of frontier entrepreneurship we definitely don't usually associate with his famous stovepipe hat. Then you have Grover Cleveland. Before entering the pristine halls of the White House, Cleveland actually worked as a sheriff, and during his tenure he remains the only president known to have personally carried out an execution. It's a really stark, almost jarring contrast between the polished image of the highest political office in the land and the bizarre, very human milestones of the people who actually held it.
Which brings us to Section 4, the people of America.
Ultimately, the surprising fabric of this nation isn't just about its land, its military, or its leaders. It is really all about the everyday citizens. Let's start with a demographic estimate that absolutely blows my mind: 1 in 10. Current estimates suggest that 1 in 10 modern Americans might actually be directly related to a passenger from the 1620 Mayflower voyage. Think about how incredible that is. A single, incredibly precarious boat journey from over 400 years ago has branched out to connect 10% of the modern population. You, or the person sitting right next to you, might actually carry the genetic echo of that one tiny voyage.
And this builds directly into our whole understanding of time in America. We so often treat the American Civil War like it's ancient history, right? Something permanently locked away in sepia-tone photographs from 1865. But despite being a relatively young nation, the U.S. remains deeply tethered to its distant past. Get this. For years, well into the modern era, the U.S. government actually continued paying a pension related to a veteran of that very American Civil War. Because of the way pensions can pass to younger spouses or dependents, the financial and literal legacy of the 1860s was still being actively managed by the government in our lifetimes. History in America isn't just dead and gone, it is a living, breathing line drawn straight to our present day.
And speaking of the present day, consider our U.S. firefighters. I think this speaks volumes about the spirit of the people right now. You might assume that keeping the nation safe from fires is entirely a professional, taxpayer-funded career path. Well, actually, more than 2/3, over 66% of all U.S. firefighters serve their communities as volunteers. They aren't doing it for a paycheck. They're doing it out of a massive spirit of civic duty. It is a really powerful reminder of just how heavily the nation relies on the quiet, everyday heroism of its own citizens.
Which brings us to our final slide, and a question I really want to leave you with today. What hidden history is in your hometown? We've seen today how America's history, culture, geography, and people are just overflowing with unexpected stories. From teenage flag designers to ancient rivers, and from massive pizza consumption to unpaid heroes keeping our towns safe, the textbooks barely scratch the surface. So here is my challenge to you. Look a little closer at your own local history. Dig beneath the obvious dates and the famous names. What surprising, unusual, and truly remarkable stories make up the fabric of where you live? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.